Good morning, guys. Um, I want to see if there are any questions about anything that we have discussed or anything that you have been shown or anything that's come to your mind, for that matter. Who wants to go first? Sheldon?
It's Barbara. I'll go before Sheldon. If that's okay with Sheldon.
Go ahead,
I yield to you, ma'am.
I wanted to just follow up and on something and add to something we ended with yesterday. We were talking about having compassion not only for our victim but the perpetrators in this realm and in our own lives as well. And then I think Kathy ended with a comment related to forgiveness and the fact that we've got to, that's the next step in the process. We got to let it go. We got to forgive. So not only do we need to have that compassion, but forgiveness as well. And I want to just talk a minute about forgiveness from a physical and spiritual perspective. Forgiveness relates to getting rid of all of that stuff that sticks to us, if you will, when we do something or when something is done to us. In other words, somebody throws the pain and it sticks. Or they throw the pain, P-A-I-N, and it sticks to us. We can get rid of this either physically or spiritual or both. As this stuff sticks to us, this residue or this or this whatever it is that has us sort of feeling antsy and anxious. We can cleanse ourselves when we experience pain. In other words, pain is good for us in a sense if we let it be. So whether that the pain is caused directly at us, to us, or through us, or by us, the pain can be either physical, it can be financial, it can be emotional, and again, physical. So when we have those things, we can choose to let it go or choose to stay there and let it fester within us. Pain, whether it's physical or emotional, can transform us if we allow it to be a transformative action. It can change us if we allow it. It can change us to be a better person if we allow it. And again, that pain, it does not have to be pain in the body. It can be financial pain or emotional pain. But if we choose to cleanse it spiritually, we can forego that physical pain. If we choose to feel the other's pain, become the other person who caused us pain, and then forgive, that's allowing it to be healed spiritually. So the universe has ways through our physical dimension that prods us to grow, or through our spiritual dimension, we can grow without the necessary prodding through the physical all the time, if that resonates.
It does. Anyone else? Okay. Based on what Barbara just said, I want to add something to that. When we talk about forgiveness, I do believe that it is impossible to experience what forgiveness really is absent of love itself. It is my belief that there has to that one has to be the essence of love in order for true forgiveness to take place. What I mean by that is we talked yesterday about some horrific things that took place in regards to the lady who was stomped to death and the young man who was tortured. When we talk about forgiving perpetrators, it's impossible to have that depth of forgiveness that is expected from our spiritual essence if we don't have the depth of love as well. The difficulty is that we find it difficult, rather, to be as expressive of love for a perpetrator as we are for the one who is the victim. It is harder to embrace with the perpetrator with the same depth of love as do we the victim of that person. However, the highest resonance of energy, the highest level of vibration itself with the universe is actually love. To have hatred or anger towards anyone on a continuous basis speaks to the absence of what love really is. If there are those whose presence you cannot stand to be in, or if you are harboring anger or hatred towards someone because of something that you perceived they did or that they really did, if you cannot let that go and treat them as though it never happened, then that speaks to the absence of love in your life, as well as the absence of your ability to forgive. In order for us to embrace this level of forgiveness and love, we must first free ourselves of hatred and anger, and we cannot carry grudges that serves as an interference to the depth of love that is necessary for us to be the essence of who we are created to be. Are there any questions about that before I continue?
This is Linda. I have a comment. I read an article about these two little 10-year-old boys. They went to the mall, and they said that they were looking for somebody that this lady had two children, and they was going to snatch one of them and take them outside and push them in front of a bus. But they couldn't get the child, so this other lady had a little 2-year-old baby, and he wandered off, and they got him, and they tortured him and killed him. Now, these are 10-year-old little boys. And the mother of the child, she said that everything fell apart because she blamed herself, and marriage failed and everything. Well, she said until she got to the point where she had to forgive herself, that's when her life, started. She picked back up and her life started. She has another child. She remarried and everything. But she had to learn to forgive herself it wasn't the fact that the hatred that she had for those two little boys. It was the guilt that was eating her alive. So when she learned how to forgive herself, that's when her life started. So forgiveness is not only for the people that commit the crime. You have to learn how to forgive yourself also.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, it is in many cases more difficult to forgive yourself and release the guilt, especially when it involves a child that you were responsible for keeping safe. There's no doubt that without that forgiveness for self, it is extremely difficult to continue living the way that you felt like you should be. But my question also comes, Linda, is where did these two boys get this desire? Where did it come from? This desire to end the life of someone just because they could or felt like they should. These desires are festering in the consciousness of this earth. The consciousness of this earth is wrought with violence and anger and self-hate. In order for us to realize the balance, the peace, the harmony that we seek so desperately, we must first filter out of this consciousness the desire to bring harm upon each other or humanity itself. The filtering of these this type of attitude or these types of desires must begin at the top, meaning that the hatred, the anger, the separateness that exists in the mindset of those who are in positions of leadership or those who are rulers, this filtering must begin with them. And since they are incapable of doing it on their own, it is incumbent upon those who are searchers of truth, those who are light bearers, to begin this process of filtering these attitudes out of the mindset of humanity. Any questions or comments about that?
This is Linda again. I also wondered at an early age like that where your mindset is, because the fact is, when they killed this child, they thought about, hey, let's lay him on the train track and make like a train hit him, and nobody will ever know that we killed him. So starting at a 10-year-old child, you thinking a child would be out playing ball or and a lot of people say, well, they watch these videos and stuff like this and it filters in their minds and everything, but it's just hard to believe that a 10-year-old child could have that much anger or rage, or I don't know what word you would use for it, but to have that in them at such an early age.
You're absolutely right. Is there anyone want to respond to that?
I just have a question. Were these two boys related? Were the 10-year-olds related? It's hard for me to see how.
No, they were friends.
You know, how one kid has that mindset and you go along with it. I mean, so you understand what I'm saying? I don't know anybody that I can come up with and that I have an intimate relationship with that I can think of anything negative, not even killing somebody, but even saying, let's go destroy property or do anything, and they won't look at me like, what are you talking about? How do you find someone who's like-minded that will want to do that.
Well, it's escalation, Ron. I don't think it started with those two 10-year-olds at that period. I think it started generations ago, from someone crossing the fence to steal somebody's apples from a tree who had told them to stay away, or from someone who decides to poison a puppy or to throw rocks at a puppy. It escalates generation after generation, and it gets to a place where violence becomes acceptable. And we do indeed live in a society where violence is acceptable, especially in the places where our leadership resides. Look at what's happening. There were 5 people killed on January 6th, and there is justification for that from the leadership. There is whitewashing of the truth from the leadership. So when this kind of attitude invades society, it doesn't know an age group. It's no different than COVID. COVID doesn't care whether you're vaccination or not. It doesn't care whether you're a Republican or Democrat, independent or libertarian. It doesn't care whether you are Caucasian, African, Chinese, or Japanese. That's the same principle with the energy of violence. It doesn't care. It invades any consciousness that allows it to. And when we begin to create a norm for violence, then it opens up everyone to this consciousness of violence or this mindset of violence. And when it begins to take over the minds of children, it is then that we begin to raise the questions like you just raised and like Linda raised, and trying to understand how could a child be thinking of something like this. It is at this time that we began to take a keener look at what's happening and began to say things like something has to be done about this, because it is becoming so pervasive until it is impossible, seemingly, to control or to bring to an end. You understand what I'm trying to say?
I do. I understand.
So this is where we are now. Now, don't get me. I don't think we're in a bad place at all. I think that we are in a good place because we are in a place where we not only understand the need for change, but we are beginning to understand how to bring about the change. Was someone about to say something?
Audrey, good morning. The thing that's striking me at this moment is when Barb talked about forgiveness, and then Linda talked about the need to forgive yourself. And that just struck me. And I guess my comment is, have we as Africans in this country forgiven ourselves? And I know that sounds kind of like we don't have anything to forgive ourselves for because everything was done to us. But in a kind of flipped aspect of it, we've carried a lot that's developed into violence and whatever, post-traumatic slave syndrome, all these things that we carry. But have we forgiven ourselves so that we can let go of some of it? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do. I do. And I don't think that we have even approached the idea of forgiving ourselves for allowing the rage to fester in us because of what happened to us, or forgiving ourselves for making every effort to engender the characteristics of the one who enslaved us and brutalized us to the point of rage. That's extremely important for us to visit the need to forgive ourselves because of allowing these things to fester in us. So, yes,
Right, and you're right. We instead of turning inward, we looked outward and we took on the characteristics of the people who were doing these things to us. So, yeah.
I mean, look at how the derogatory words have seeped into our vocabulary in an accepting way. The B word that was used against our females, really calling them dogs, especially when they were pregnant. The MF words doing the breeding of slaves, forcing males to be intimate with their mothers and sisters in order to become breeders. These words that were brought into existence, during the time of slavery, have now become everyday words in reference to each other. So these are these types of things that we have embraced. We must at some point face the reality of the need for forgiveness of ourselves for embracing them. And I think this is the point where we do that. Anyone else? Audrey, is that clear, or I don't know what the answer or the response?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We've, instead of allowing the indwelling of the Spirit to create who we are, we allowed outside society to create who we are. And then we took on that persona as opposed to, realizing who we were.
You know what's really crazy about that? The word, the N word, came from Niger, which speaks to the idea of king and queen, and we throw that away. We don't want that because they say that they used it in a negative way, even though it was a positive word. And we know for a fact that the B word and the MF words are negative words, and we've embraced them. Why have we done that? Is it that we have been convinced so thoroughly to hate ourselves and our existence until we have begun to continuously denigrate ourselves generation after generation? At some point, that has to be recognized and brought to an end. And I think the end of that comes when we recognize the need for forgiving ourselves for having done that. Comments, questions?
I agree.
Hey, Rick, like what Linda was saying, these kids had did that to that child. Not only that, it had on the news that these two boys, this man was in the field bush hogging or cutting whatever he was doing on the tractor. They just brought the gun out of the house and shot the man in the back. And they couldn't find the man until his wife knew he was doing the bush hogging, and they found him humped over the tractor, dead.
Yeah.
And these two little boys, I think
8 and 9.
They were probably 8 or 9 years old, and they got them, but they're gonna be in juvenile. But I'm thinking that the parents need to play some part in this right here too.
Well,
Both of them keep doing what they did.
I agree with you, Charles, and it depends, Charles, on the nature of what happened. Why would an 8 or 9-year-old have access to deadly weapons? Yet we live in a society where weapons are worshipped more than the God that they say they serve is worshipped. And I do believe that the parents should play a part in that, because an 8 and 9-year-old did not purchase the weapons. So I do indeed agree with that. And again, we live in a society that's wrought with violence. Let's harken back to some things and see where it came from. The Chinese. The Chinese have been shooting fireworks for thousands of years and had no thought of making a weapon from gunpowder. However, the moment that a Caucasian saw that gunpowder was able to propel a projectile, the first thing came to his mind was to do violence with it, to make a object or make an instrument of death, or instrument of destruction. And from that, here we are. We are at instruments of death that can cause mass casualties. Why? Because of the mindset of a group of people who has no sense of love and kindness, and when it comes to embracing peace and harmony with humanity. So it is on our shoulders to make the necessary changes for this, and it is my understanding that the only way that we are going to be able to do this is when we follow the instructions that Jesus gave. And those instructions that Jesus gave were to return to beginning, and that I'll talk about a little bit later. However, I want to speak to something else in regards to the attitudes of those who would make violence so prevalent in our society. These are the same people who are in church all day Sunday and half the evening on Wednesday. These are the same people who are gun lovers and liars about the Second Amendment rights. And when you look at them, they are always talking about adhering to the what is called the Ten Commandments, when in actuality they are orders. If you look at the Hebrew word commandment, the origin of it is actually orders. These are not commandments from God. These are orders that God gave us. Would you mute your phone, please? Would you mute your phone, please? These are orders given from our Creator for the purpose of guidance. So what do we do in order to bring an end to this? I want to hear again a bit more of where our minds are in terms of what we've been shown. However, before we get off of the line, I want to talk about what I see when I've been shown, rather, when we talk about the idea of returning to beginning. What does that look like? I want to touch that in a few moments. However, I would like to hear where our minds are in relationship to what we have been shown during the periods of our meditation and desires for change.
Went back to
Now,
what?
this Ron.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Charlotte, because you started earlier. Go ahead.
I yield to you.
He always heals.
I'm a
Okay.
very, very,
Um,
very nice person. I want everyone to be able to speak.
Except you.
um, I like the discussion on forgiveness. This was one that I have to admit I wrestled with. And forgiveness, to me, just explaining in my terms and listening to what Bob and Audrey said, forgiveness is something that you just have to take ownership of. You either do it or you don't. It's if not, it can become a little evasive and you not take ownership of it, and you can be overtaken by whatever it is that's keeping you from doing the forgiving. So, and I mean by that is if there's someone that I love, it's always been easier to forgive because the forgiveness is, I can see it. It's attached to that love. And it seems to be more of an internal thing. Something along the lines of the examples that
Hello, I think we lost Ron.
Welcome to the NTT's yes, I'm trying to reconnect. Some way got disconnected. Please say your name, followed by pound. Your call has been placed in conference.
Yeah, I was just forgiveness at times if it's not something that I recognize, and I was talking about people that I love and I know. It seems to come from a different place, and it's easier to recognize it and see it, and easy to implement even. But based on using the examples we've talked about the last couple of days, that seemed to come from a different place, and that's where I get the you have to want to. And the love is not always recognized in the way that I'm used to recognizing love, and so it's something that I try to see on a bigger picture, and not from a micro perspective, but from the macro perspective, the bigger picture telling me that this is the right thing to do, and the person that perpetrates these actions needs you as well as the victim does. So it just talking about forgiveness, and then Audrey talks about forgiving ourselves. I think that's extremely powerful, and maybe something too that needs to be explored. But it just something that sometimes we get off the phone, and I don't mean just here lately, but when we've talked about forgiveness in the past, I have a clearer vision of it now, but and always easy to implement because it wasn't something that I could see and grasp readily. So I don't want to keep rambling on, but it's just something you to me you have to take ownership of. You just this is the action that I'm going to take. This is what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to let this defeat me or take me in another direction, kind of thing.
I think.
I hope.
Ron,
I hope it's what I'm saying.
I do. I really do, and I think that honestly, the difficulty with it is not only environmental in terms of how we've been taught to be angry with the perpetrator and be compassionate with the victim, when both of them are actually victims if we look at it spiritually. I think it'll become even clearer and less difficult when we understand how to live at that place called beginning. I think that even though Nicodemus was the only person to whom Jesus spoke of returning to beginning, I do think that the idea of being in this world but not of it speaks to the concept of living at that space called beginning. And when we are able to embrace that, and even if we don't totally understand it, to understand it well enough or to accept it well enough to embrace it, it is at that point that we begin to see the act and not the person. And what I mean by that is we begin to see the sickness of our society that fosters that kind of behavior, and see that the perpetrator is a victim of the mindset of our society, as opposed to someone who should be hated or despised. That person is someone who needs to be healed by forgiveness, because the scripture clearly tells us that love covers a multitude of entanglements, and love itself is a process of not only healing for us, but a process of deliverance for those who are in bondage to perpetual violence. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, yeah.
Are there any... Sheldon, go ahead, please.
Ron, we on Zoom got cut off in the middle of your speaking, but we were able to catch the latter part. And my comment actually was aligned with yours, talking about forgiveness, and is also connected to beginning as well. When Ms. Barbara first started speaking about forgiveness, and I started to think forgiveness, or the lack of forgiveness, does the same thing in a way, if you can imagine a blood clot. A blood clot physically becomes an impediment, becomes a barrier, a hindrance in the system. It does not allow blood to circulate through the body freely and effortlessly, seamlessly as it needs to in order to operate, for the body to function, operate properly. The inability to forgive, no matter who it is that forgiveness is being held against, no matter how bad or terrible the offense of the person that the forgiveness is being held from, or towards, it causes a blockage within us on a spiritual level. It causing that blockage within us on a spiritual level, it's the same very thing that keeps us from going to beginning, because when you think of beginning is all, beginning is free flowing, all that in terms of love and everything else, being with the Father, all those things that we talk about, the Bible speaks of. The inability to forgive causes an impediment, causes a blockage not to reach that particular point. In our lives personally, in the same way, when we hold a grudge and we are uptight or for whatever reason, no matter what it is that once again the perpetrator did, that becomes a burden of sorts on us. It becomes something that is heavy, that is that we drag around, so to speak. In a way, it is anti-freedom, so to speak. And not, of course, talking about freedom from a physical sense, but talking about freedom from our higher sense or our spiritual sense, our soul sense, to the point where we're keeping ourselves down. So I just wanted to point out that point, that to not forgive or to fight against forgiveness, to hold on to a grudge, is essentially us causing or allowing something to become a blockage within ourselves. I'm finished.
Thank you, sir. I concur.
I like that. Yeah, I do too. I guess my coping mechanism, and tell if you think something with this. I have, in the last few years, but especially here lately, I really think the Creator has opened up doors for us, and we're gaining enlightenment by leaps and bounds, and seeing things and being able to make changes and spread love and compassion as we started. And so when I look at it, I say what I have said all my life is, who am I? Why was I born? Why am I here? And to that, I'm gaining answers. I'm seeing who I am. And I stay with the love and compassion. But if I stop to look at it, individual things like the stumping of the woman in front of her mom, the two little 10-year-olds, that bothers me. It stops me. I have to look at, I see the big picture, and I can pull forgiveness from the big picture and see it from that perspective. From the little, they're not little, but you know what I mean, the detailed parts of it is difficult for me to ponder and to come up with a path that way. I have to look at the whole thing, and that's what works for me. And that may not be the right approach. I don't know.
But the right approach is to get you to where you need to be.
This is Ramel. I have a question on understanding what Ron and Sage and Sheldon were just saying. So the manifestation of all these behaviors that we're seeing in our young, that's largely a result of built up through generations of anger, hatred, and those kinds of things?
Say again, Ramiro.
Okay. The things that we see happening now with children younger doing unacceptable behaviors. All of that is a manifestation of generations of unforgiveness, hatred, anger built up over generations. That's basically what we're saying?
Yes.
So those are things that we have to, those are things we are. We're seeing it, but it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It means we're moving in the right direction and things we need to deal with.
Yes.
And that's part of the balance and harmony we've been requesting, we've been desiring.
That's an approach to it.
That's an approach to it?
I mean, yes. For us to be shown these things, it shows us the deep need for peace and harmony.
Okay.
And the
So when
issue
we-
is,
Go ahead,
Go
Ms.
ahead,
Barbara. Sorry. No, go
the
ahead.
issue is all of these things have been out there all along as part of our as humanity, part of our not being aware of who we are. It's just that with all of the light that's been exposed and that exposes stuff, we pay attention to it. And sometimes it's certain things like Ron was talking about, connecting to the specific incidences of violence was difficult. But then we have the passage where the slaves were affected by certain things. We had the Holocaust. Another group of people were affected by certain things. The chaos has been out there and is out there all along. We're just able now to look at it much more precisely. And it seems like these individual ones that help us pay attention more. That's all it's done. Help us to focus in even more with a laser focus that, wow, this still is happening and we need to do something about it. And I guess the thing to remember is that we've been talking about enslavement, enslaved people, but we can be enslaved by our own thoughts, our own egos, our jobs, our children, our own fears, our careers, our spouses, all of those things, if we allow it to get out of balance, can cause us to be enslaved to it, can cause certain attitudes toward it, certain negative attitudes toward it. We can be enslaved by alcohol if we allow it to control us rather than we be able to control our intake of it. Cigarettes, whatever the issue is. And the only way we can begin, and I think Linda put a finger on it when she asked the question about self-forgiveness. The only way that we can begin to impact what's happening in the broader world is to change our world, because we are part of the broader world. Just like a stone that falls from a mountain, it was part of the mountain. It was called mountain when it was part of the mountain. But when it broke away from the mountain, what we saw with our physical eyes was the small stone and the large mountain. But if it's attached back to the mountain, it becomes part of the mountain. That's the same thing as our attaching and becoming aware of our attachment to our wound. We are it, and it is us. So when we change ourselves, we change, we affect the change we want to see in the world. And when that change is a positive kind of loving kindness, compassionate kind of caring for humanity and not for ourselves only, or for this race or that race only, that's when we begin to, that's when light just shines, not only on us, but it shines at a level where other people begin to, as we say, put in the macro, other people begin to be able to access that same kind of attitude towards what it means to be a part of the human race, rather, and part of the spiritual existence, rather than me, myself, I, thinking about only what's good for me, or thinking about only what I want to do, or thinking about how I can hurt somebody. So again, my perspective is that by talking about children are our thoughts in action, in a sense. And so by our focusing on what children and what individual people do, it just targets us and focuses on the fact that all of this chaos is still there, and that we're on the right track because we're picking up on it, because it's been happening all along, guys. We've just not paid as much attention to it.
Does that help you, Vermeil?
Yeah, it does. It helps me to understand. It's like we're all a puzzle piece and we all are affecting each other. So it helps me understand it from just moving myself out of me, myself, and I into understanding the spiritual aspect of it. It's everyone. It's not. My eyes were tunnel vision, and they need not to be. So I really appreciate that. Yes, it helps a lot.
It's like looking through a pinhole in the wall.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, it's no longer a pinhole. It's the section of the wall has been removed, and now you can see it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I gathered from what Barbara was saying.
Yes. It's like we're in this abyss. We've never been separated. Oh my gosh. Yes. Very helpful.
Suppose that we are the ones who are supposed to engage with those who seeks harm against us. We are to engage with them in order to show them how to amplify the spiritual essence of their being. Suppose that in order for the presence, power, essence of Elohim to be truly and fully exhibited, it is incumbent upon us to alter the mindset of the most violent, selfish, and greedy group of people the earth has ever known. Transform them into Elohim by virtue of loving kindness. Suppose that's our mandate that we have for so long ignored or been unaware of. If that is the case, then would it not be that the very thing that we are searching for or making an effort to fulfill is a journey to beginning? Suppose that journey to beginning is not a journey to a space of beginning. Rather, it is who we are. We are beginning itself. Suppose we are beginning itself, meaning that it is from the African that everything emanates, since from the womb of Africa came all of humanity. Suppose we are that beginning. We are Eden. We are the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and Eden, good and evil. We are all of these things of beginning. Then would it not make sense for us to understand what this idea of Eden and is, in order for us to be able to embrace what beginning is? Does that make sense?
Yes.
So much.
So if we are beginning and we are Eden, then what does it mean when we talk about Eden being a place of pleasure? Or what does it mean when we talk about Eden being a delight? See, material pleasures are temporal. material delight is short-lived. However, if we see eating, which is spiritual, as being the essence of pleasantness and delightfulness and pleasure, then we must be the source of spiritual pleasure at all times. When we talk about being the essence of beginning, then we are that pleasant place, meaning that emanating from us is not hatred and revenge. The only thing that emanates from this place of pleasure is loving kindness, forgiveness, and mercy. So, if that is true, then this idea of being that garden will also mean that the inner workings of our essence involves understanding what is meant when it talks about, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because it speaks to the substance of our being. The idea of a tree, suppose that it simply is talking about conceptual understanding or the understanding of concepts. Suppose that this beginning is a pleasant place where we understand the concept of existence, meaning that we understand the pros and cons of life itself. We understand the advantages and disadvantages of being kind. We understand the concept that would cause one to enter a state of greed and lord it over other people. This idea of being the tree of life speaks to the ability to be self-governing, or the ability to be accountable, to take responsibility for our actions, and in the midst of all of this, we are still the essence of what pleasantness is, and we understand that there is a degree of spiritual maturity that's necessary before we are able to handle the power that comes with or that accompanies this knowledge of self-awareness, this idea that we are Elohim, that we understand that this self-awareness is imperative for us to be able to handle in the right way the power that comes along with self-awareness, and we understand that the reason that there are those who don't want to embrace this is not because they don't want to, as much as they fear it because they don't understand it, or they're in denial of its existence because they have been taught to believe that God or Elohim is an entity or being that is separate from us, as opposed to being who we are. And when we talk about this feminine aspect being structured from a real, it's actually not speaking about a real as much as it talks about one who sustains another, that this feminine energy is the sustaining force because it is from feminine energy, the womb of it, that all life flows into this earth realm. And this idea talking about bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh does not separate. It's what it actually does is speak of being identical in terms of essence, but yet different in terms of responsibilities. Suppose all of these things are speaking to who we are in terms of beginning. And when it talks about the idea of the serpent is talking about self-deception. It's not talking about any one of us anyone deceiving us as much as we have deceived ourselves by virtue of embracing all those things that we are not, embracing the idea of being quote-unquote church folk or Christians who are able to lay down our religion and pick it back up, or being taught to embrace the lie about the crucifixion of Jesus and presenting Jesus as a Roman figure being crucified, as opposed to the reality of the African being crucified by those who the teachers of Jesus are set to bring to a place of awareness or self-awareness of the divinity that's within them. And rather than following those teachings and bringing that self-awareness, we have sought to embrace the characteristics of those who crucified, as opposed to accepting the teachings of the one who was crucified. Does that make sense? Any questions or comments about this? What about the supposition? Can you see the essence of our being forgiveness?
Yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sheldon. I yield to you.
I was just going to say, going back to Ms. Vermeil, well, the connection to what you just said, Pastor Richard, and connecting it to also with what Ms. Vermeil asked in terms of her question. And I guess when I start off with this, make sure to see this, and I'm speaking to everyone when I say this, to see the bigger picture of what I'm talking about. And this is connected with what Ms. Barbara was saying as well. Those kids were just a reflection of macroly, where essentially everyone is, not just including us, in terms of people's self-identity or lack of self-identity and self-awareness in their lives, the hatred and things of that nature. That has been fostered for a while now, even in terms of the leadership, in terms of the encouragement of being selfish, and this idea that everyone basically needs to get it for themselves, to support themselves, etc. So even on a subconscious level, people have been encouraged, and it has become normal for people to be selfish, for people to be hatred, for people to isolate themselves from everything. That which we saw, of course, and what we are doing is we are countering that and putting it out in the macro and being representative of that, not only outwardly, but of course in our lives as well, in letting essentially love flow freely. So now it becomes like a wave. Love does not stop in any particular way whatsoever. And going back to the last few days, we talked about the wind, and you can't see the wind at all, but you know it's there because you can see the effect that it has upon everything. So you cannot deny its existence. It's yet in the same way that love goes on and transforms and penetrates people's heart and has an effect on their decisions and their openness and the way that they interact with others around them, what they experience, what they see, etc. So that in itself is what we do, and it is through our attempts and desire to be one, to be with the beginning, that we spread that and make that available to all as well. And it's also our desire of going to beginning that also propels us further into beginning as well. Finish at the moment.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Barbara?
I was going to respond to what you were saying about beginning in the place of pleasure and not deceiving ourselves about who we are. And what reverberated in me was when God had given Moses the 10 Commandments, he'd given them the tools that they needed to overcome death and, I was going to say death and taxes, but that too. But at that point in time, as you reminded us, sometime previously, people's shoes didn't wear out, their clothes didn't wear out, there was no decay. There was what he told Moses, why are you asking me what to do? Step into the water. And that's where we are today. We've been given the knowledge and the wisdom and the awareness of who we are. And so we cannot anymore ask, what are we going to do about this? How can we handle that? The issue is the distant God is not going to take care of it, because the distant God is you, and you are it. You are it. The buck stops with us now that we have this, now that we are aware that we are Elohim. And so the issue is we need to just step into the water, decree what it is that we know to be right, that facilitates balance and harmony and peace, and stand on that and stay on that. And, it's like Moses had to keep his arm up and somebody had to help him. We have to stand on that and don't let that, whatever we see of these little snippets of things that really arrest our attention, because they're important. They're important because they remind us, as you said, Pastor, and Sheldon said, of what's in the bigger, and Ron, what's in the bigger picture of things going on out there. But despite that, we have to also stay focused on what's been given to us, what we are a part of, who we are, and move and stand on that, irregardless of what we see out there or what we see through the keyhole, which is only a little small portion of what's out there in the physical realm on a larger scale. But it doesn't matter how small it is or how large it is. That's not the issue. The issue is, what are we doing about it? And are we doing what we know to do because of who we are?
Thank you, ma'am. Questions, comments?
I have a comment. I listened to everything everyone has said this morning, which is very profound and enlightening to me. But what comes to mind, a song, of course. When Michael Jackson made the song, I'm Starting with the Man in the Mirror, that song really resonates with me now. And I guess it's because my eyes have been open to a lot of things. But I just wanted to make that comment.
The question is, what mirror are we looking in? Is it the physical mirror, or is it the cosmic, the universal mirror? Because the universal mirror, once we are aware of who we are, when we put things out there that speak to the benefit of humanity, that's what's going to be reflected and back to us. Just like you look in the mirror. If you frown in the mirror, you're gonna get a frown back. If you curse at the mirror, that's what's coming back at you from a universal perspective. And so we have to be very careful about what we put in that macro. That macro is our mirror, and the mirror is us. And so you're right, Evelyn, that we have to look at the man in the mirror, but we have to look at the Elohim in the cosmic mirror.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Evelyn.
But yeah, I feel now Michael Jackson was a very deep person and spiritual person, and I don't know if he meant the outside or whatever, but I look at it from the inside because it has everything to do with how I am inside or how I look out of my mind's eye. So I took it as it being the internal being and not the outer being.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Hey, Rep.
Hey, Charlie.
You know, you had talked about this before. Now, the Caucasian integrated us into their culture, just like they integrated the Indian into their culture. And I think our culture and the Indian culture, we was already spiritual, but when we got integrated into their culture, we lost all our understanding, all our way of doing things, all our way of being. So I'm thinking we begin to learn how to break that change.
Okay. Yes. We lost a lot. You're absolutely right. Matter of fact, I was talking to somebody recently, and one of the things that I was talking about is how I asked the question. I said, "Do you remember how we used to make our own soap?" You know, and of course I'm talking physically now. How we made lye soap and how we made tallow. And I want to ask a question. Is there anyone who on this phone who's 40 or older who have never heard of lye soap? Or is there? That's a part of, it seems so simple, but the question is, how did we learn how to do that? Where did that come from? Where did the idea of taking beef or cow fat and making an ointment out of it that really was had medicinal effects? Where did it come from? How did we know to do that? Is it not probable that it came because of who we are? Think about it. The medicines, the plant kingdom that yields medicinal, that gives us medicines rather, came from the indigenous people and the African. Now, how is it that you can bring someone from Africa to this nation or this land, and they are able to use the plant kingdom in order to heal the body without having any quote-unquote formal training, to lay a foundation for a system of medicine and healing in this world, not just this nation, but in this world? Where did that come from? It had to emanate from a place of all beginnings, from a place where everything started. The reason the African is so forgiving is because the African loves its creation. The reason the African is so forgiving is because the African loves its children. Even when the children are rebellious, selfish, greedy, brutal, the source, the womb deceived seed of those children, still forgive those children and welcome them back into the family, never rejecting them. Why? Because there is no rejection in Eden. In Eden, there is always opportunity for redemption, because Eden is not delighted with the attitude of his children. It is delighted with his children and the potential that his children has. So that place of beginning, the entity of beginning, recognizes readily the pros and cons that life presents, and that is the entity of Eden recognizes that it is beginning. It is the one who is to bring ripeness to the children that came from the womb of Eden. And you cannot bring the children to a place of recognizing their origin if you hate them, if you reject them, if you don't show mercy to them, if you don't forgive them, if you don't love them. One of the reasons I believe that we are beginning itself is because of those factors that I have just spoken of. In addition to that, understanding that this is not a journey to be taken by masculine energy alone. It has to be accompanied by the feminine, because it is from the womb of the feminine that everything is birthed. The seed may conceive of it, but it cannot be brought to fruition without the impregnation of the feminine aspects of what humanity is. The understanding of the concepts of this life itself is what meant when it speaks about a tree in the midst of Eden. It is talking about the conceptual understanding that's in the midst, in the midst of the essence of who we are in this earth. When we talk about things being foreign to us, meaning that we don't relate to them in the same way that other people do because they are detrimental to humanity, the reason we talk about them being foreign to us is because we are foreign. We are in this world but not of it. We have made every effort to be of it, but every single time that we have tried to become what this world is, we have been rejected. We have been slaughtered. And the reason that our Creator has allowed this to happen is because we had to be forced into a corner so that we could take the time to contemplate not only who we are, but why are we being treated the way we are. We are being treated the way we are because we are not understood by the children. The children do not understand who we are, so they seek to take advantage of all the positivity in who we are and destroy what's left. We must accept the reality that we have ingrained in our spiritual DNA the essence of Elohim. And regardless of how we try to run away from that, regardless of how we embrace religion, whether it be Christianity, Islam, or any other religion, regardless of how we do that, it does not change the essence of our DNA. It doesn't change who we are created to be. We are the dominant DNA, regardless of who we are with intimately. when we are intimate, we can see the physical dominance of the DNA. That physical dominance of the DNA is simply a manifestation of the spiritual dominance of that DNA. And spiritual domination has nothing to do with relegating someone to a position of inferiority or secondary existence. Domination of DNA speaks to the idea of being dominant so that we can rid the earth of racism, rid the earth of everything that is adverse to the growth, to the embracing of the essence of who we are, and the ideal that our humans are divine in nature. And when we embrace the spirituality with the same tenacity that we have embraced our humanness, it is at that point that this earth begins to experience a resurgence of loving kindness. It does not mean that every single individual is going to embrace it. There will be those who will live on the fringes of harmony and peace, but they will not be the dominant force in this earth realm. It is not incumbent upon us to bring into existence a new heaven and a new earth. That has already taken place. We are in the process of manifesting it. Bobby spoke of decreeing it and letting it be. That's it. Our declaration, our decree, our mantra is a new heaven and a new earth. A new heaven meaning that a sense of enlightenment that is free from religious dogma and manipulation. A new earth in terms of a consciousness or an awareness of self that shows not only who we are, but enhances a positive relationship between those who are in human form. And in doing these things and accomplishing these goals, what we begin to acknowledge is that, yes, we are Elohim. Yes, we are on land, because our origin is not the earth. Our origin is the universe itself. And please, would you mute your phones, please? Would you make sure that your phones are muted? So when we recognize the essence of who we are, then and only then will we be able to truly become the mirrors that our children need, so that they can begin to manifest the reality of who they are. They are their parents' children, and being their parents' children, they have been infused with divinity also. They just don't know how to embrace that divinity to the extent that it becomes the dominant force in their lives. Any questions or comments about that?
I just want to add to what Charles was saying. We didn't really lose anything. We just created a duality in terms of Africans and Native Americans. We tried to take on a persona that was not us. So we created this duality, but we didn't lose anything, because as soon as we recognize who we are, everything is there for us in the universe.
Thank you, ma'am.
So that just like when Moses went up to the mountain, and during that time he was in the mountain, the people down there got the spirit that Moses dead or whatever, so they created a golden calf to follow.
Yeah, people in the moment or in whatever circumstances, they try to create a God for themselves, as opposed to trusting in the one that's there, that they know to be there. So yeah.
And in doing so, what did they do? They deceived themselves because they knew that this was not the God that created them. This was not the God that brought them out of Egypt. This was not the God that parted the Red Sea. This was not the God that fed them and protected them while they were in the wilderness. So they deceived themselves. What am I saying? What I'm saying is this. We have never, ever been deceived by Caucasians or anyone else. We deceived ourselves. And the reason we deceived ourselves is because we felt like we could not survive unless we embraced what was being presented to us. We did that to protect our children, not realizing that what we were doing was perpetuating the human body and not the spiritual existence of who we are. So that happened and means that we became the serpents who deceived ourselves. And we never left the place of beginning. We were blind by self-deception until we could not see it. And every time that we made an effort to see it, we were accused of playing the race card. And because we wanted to be pleasing to our captors, we refrained from recognizing who we are and from presenting to each other, from embracing the essence of our being, because we want to be accused of, quote-unquote, playing the race card. However, now that we have come to the place where it doesn't matter what anyone thinks about us, how they feel about us, we are going to say what the truth is. If the accusation of playing the race card is presented, so be it. Let it run off you like water on the back of a duck. We don't care. What we care about is peace and harmony with humanity. What we care about is embracing the reality of who we were created to be. What we care about is knowing that we are truly the Elohim. We are God in this earth. And without the presence of life of God in this earth, there is no earth. And without the recognition by the God of his earth that it is that, then there is no change in this earth. There is no harmony, there is no peace in this earth. So when we embrace this, what we are actually embracing is beginning, because in the beginning created Elohim. And if beginning brought Elohim into existence, then Elohim brought into existence all of these things that we are talking about, then that means that we never left beginning. We are beginning. We are everything that it represents. And in being that, we don't have to be able to intellectually, academically explain it. We don't have to be able to regurgitate it. What we must be able to do is embrace it. And once we embrace it, it doesn't have to be understood in our minds because it is settled in our souls. Any questions about that? Any comments about that? Are we settled with this?
I am, Rep, because everything you said is right.
Thank you.
I
Yes,
am too,
absolutely.
Pastor.
And so let it be.
Am I saying something?
I was just going to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just simply said, and so let it be.
Oh, thank you.
I was just saying that I have a clearer picture of beginning. My mind stayed on pleasure, and we were talking about pleasure, and what I was trying to do before, I was just trying to see a picture of what they're supposed to look like, but I what I see now, looking at it from a spiritual perspective, pleasure is whatever it needs to be, so it doesn't look like any particular thing. And what I mean by that is you defined pleasure as love and kindness and forgiveness and mercy and those things. So that says to me that anything that is needed comes from that pool. So you being us, have the authority to pull anything from that pool. And it's not so much that it's there waiting for you, but it's created when you need it to be. Because you are a spiritual being. So I'm tying that, and this is me seeing it in my way, I'm tying that to verse 8 in chapter 3 of John, where it talks about the wind. That verse on the wind is saying that there is nothing in the earth that can bind you. There is nothing in the earth that has authority over you. When you see this and you become spirit, there's nothing that can stop you. You have no limitations, and you have nothing that is man-made or any authority in the earth that can govern you. So that just spoke to me when you said that, the loving kindness and you know, because we talked about love covering a multitude of entanglements of sin. So this spoke to me, and I just saw it in a different way.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Pastor, I have a question then. So when Ron mentioned the wind, for some reason the wind has been, it's just been on my mind a lot. So the wind is telling me I am everywhere. I can be anywhere when I want to be. Or
the wind is telling you that you are it and it is you, yes. The only thing that humans truly fear and cannot control, one of them is wind and water. Men are afraid of those two things. There is absolutely no structure that men can construct, that they can build, that can withstand wind and water, or water decides to destroy it. So what am I saying to you? We are constantly being shown the magnitude of the power that we are. This power unharnessed is a threat to the existence of the physical world. This power harnessed can be the asset that it was created to be for this world. We are that asset. The destruction of the wind and the water is a manifestation of the destruction of the mindset of our children. Let's get our children under control so that the mindset will not be the hurricane, will not be the tsunami, that the wind would be for the purpose for which it was brought into existence, and that is to pollinate, that is to bring comfort, that is to soothe and to hug and nurse and nurture the body. When you're agitated, the cool, subtle breeze can bring harmony to you. The idea of the water is significant of the existence of these bodies. When we are able to bring our children under control, then we are able to bring some sense of harmony to the destructive forces in the earth as well. Does that make sense to you? Can you see the parallels? Can you see the connection?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to say one more thing, if you don't mind. I was watching this movie, and it was an Asian movie. And these people are out in the rice field doing what they do. And when there was a breeze that would come, they all would stop and hold their head up and just embrace the wind. And that has always stuck with me. And I said, it's got to be something that I don't know that I want to be made aware of. And now that you're talking about it, it's just, I'm in awe.
The wind cuddles you. When I am sitting under the trees in the back, I'm sitting on the bench, and it's about 10 degrees cooler there than it is any place else. And all of a sudden, there is a breeze. And regardless of what is going through my mind or how agitated I be, that breeze brings a sense of comfort. And I believe that it does that because it is the essence of the ancestors embracing me, embracing the essence of who I am, is touching this body and saying, calm down. It is giving me the ability to calm this body, to bring this energy back into rhythm with the energy of the universe. Does that make sense?
A lot of sense. Yes, sir. Yes.
Pastor,
Yes.
this is LaVon. Evelyn, Barbara said something a couple of weeks ago, and it has stayed with me in reference to John 3:8. And she said, we are like the wind, the invisible that moves, the invisible that moves the visible. We are that energy that is constantly flowing. And that has stayed with me when I think about the beginning, and it has come from the beginning. So we are like the wind, that invisible that moves the visible. And Barbara, I thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am. And that's what you have just described is how we move our children to a place of balance. We are the invisible force that moves the visible manifestation of the rage, of the greed and hatred that is exhibited by our children. We are that force that does that. And if the breeze can give us that kind of comfort, then that is what is meant when it speaks of love covering a multitude of sins. If we hate our children, then our children will never be comforted, and they will remain in the state that they are. However, the love and mercy and forgiveness that we exhibit towards them is what brings them to a place of calmness that allows them to come to a place of maturity. Right now, they are immature, and the immaturity is what creates the greatest danger for humanity. It's imperative that we embrace this. Questions or comments?
Pastor, for clarity's sake, when we were saying our children, are we speaking, because we started the conversation really talking about youth, but we're not talking about youth in reference to age right now. We're talking about the Caucasian in the mindset of they are our children. Is that what you're speaking of?
That's exactly what I'm speaking of. Thank you for that clarification. That's exactly what I'm speaking of. And when we talk about our youth in terms of the children that Linda raised earlier, we are talking about them being reflective of that attitude that we must free the earth from. Any other questions or comments? Do we have a clearer sense of what we are talking about when we talk about beginning?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
So let's be who we are. when we are faced with the ugliness that's headed our way, knowing that we are beginning tells us that we have everything necessary to transform the ugliness into a thing of beauty, which is balance for the whole of humanity. Ugliness is not designed to destroy us. It is coming to us because it desires to be brought to balance. Our Creator brings things to us for us to deal with. Our Creator is not going to balance the ugliness. We are the authorities to balance the ugliness. And there is no authority that supersedes our authority, regardless of what you may think or have been taught. Questions, comments? No questions, no comments? I am very thankful for your presence, your comments, and your thoughts. I continually solicit them. I solicit you to at some point either sit in a place to meditate or live a life of meditation so that we can consistently and constantly be shown what is needed for a time such as this. So I am looking forward to tomorrow at 6 o'clock to see what the Creator has shown us. I have no clue as to who will be shown what, and I don't even desire to know that. But what I do desire is to be present at 6 o'clock so I can be infused with whatever has been shown. Enjoy the rest of your day and embrace what has been said, even though we may not be able to regurgitate it. It is not necessary because, believe you me, it is settled in our soul. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, and you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Great day, family.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.